Thank you all for being here tonight. It's great to see so many of you. And as most of you know, we usually begin with 2 featured speakers who each get 5 minutes to share their message, with time for a couple of questions directly after their presentations. And then we open it up for anyone who would like to speak for 2 minutes. All speakers will get a 30-second warning, and then you will hear the bell. And if you would like to speak tonight, please fill out a yellow card and give it to Klaus. He's our moderator tonight. And Mike is our timer. Mike, are you here? Okay, Jim, you're going to be our timer tonight. Okay, the PVA board here tonight includes Allie Grossman, Sharon Breitweiser, Klaus Helpscutt, Jim Erdelli, and me. And PVA does not endorse any candidates or issues. Please pass the bucket during the meeting. Your donations go toward our expenses, supplies, Zoom, and the use of this building. And before we actually turn the meeting over to Klaus, please find somebody you don't know, or at least don't know well, and spend 2 minutes sharing what is new and good in your life. Thank you.
Welcome. Can everybody hear me okay? I assume so. Thank you for coming to the August PVA meeting. It's exciting to see some new faces and to see some familiar faces. I'm always thrilled on the 3rd Monday of every month to come here and spend time with you all, especially when we have great featured speakers. And tonight is not an exception. We have, again, great featured speakers. So we do have Kayla White, our Albany County Clerk, best clerk in Wyoming if you want my opinion. She'll be jumping up here shortly to be talking about new changes to the Wyoming state election law, the new requirements and changes to voter registration. I'm sure you have lots of questions for her on that, and the importance of registering early. And when we're done with Kayla, we have a new attendee tonight, Eric Wiltse, retired UW journalism instructor, and I'm really looking forward to this. We'll discuss the threats to the First Amendment and the public's right to know. The public's right to know that's been impeded by the current administration, and he will specifically focus on local newspapers. And if any of you have been paying attention over the last few weeks, local newspapers in the state of Wyoming took a little bit of a hit. And fortunately, I think it was 8 newspapers that were closed down, and most of them have been brought back up by local owners. So that's good news. We have to have local newspapers and reporting. It's exceptionally important. But anyhow, this should be a great meeting. I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to our featured speakers. And with that, I will be quiet and introduce Kayla White, our awesome county clerk.
I know I'm a little bit shorter than you are. So can everybody hear me okay? All right. Thank you, Klaus, for that nice introduction, and thank you for having me here this evening. It's always a pleasure to come out and be able to talk about elections. It's good to get that information out early so that we all know what's going on in our state and in our county. I think the biggest thing that I want to talk about this evening is House Bill 156, which passed in the last legislative session regarding proof of voter residency and registration qualifications. So what that act did is it requires a person to be a bona fide resident of Wyoming for not less than 30 days before voting in an election. And it also requires that a person provide proof of residence and proof of United States citizenship when registering to vote, and it specifies the documents and means necessary to provide proof, including authorizing the Secretary of State to specify applicable documentation. So there were some emergency rules that were passed by the governor signed. The Secretary of State brought those rules forward. What that means for people voting and registering in Albany County is when you register to vote, your Wyoming driver's license is your golden ticket. Your Wyoming driver's license provides your proof of residency, and it also provides your proof of citizenship. As you all know, in the corner of your driver's license, I believe it's the right-hand corner, you have that star with the circle around it. That means that you are Real ID compliant. Wyoming is a Real ID compliant state. From my understanding, all states have to be compliant now as of May 1st to be Real ID compliant. So if you come in from another state, having a Colorado driver's license, it should be Real ID compliant. So that gives you your proof of citizenship is what that gives. And just so everybody knows, prior to even this law, we already proved your citizenship by running you through our state voter registration system. What that does is it runs it through the Department of Health, the Department of Corrections, WYDOT, and Social Security Administration. So basically what it already does is it already provides that you are a citizen of the United States. So nothing has changed in terms of citizenship. Now the difference now that we're going to see is in residency. That's where you have to have that 30 days prior to any election where you're offering to vote. So it's going to have an issue on election day, and that's where you're going to want to register to vote early. So if you know somebody, don't wait until election day, because it is going to be harder on those judges and on our staff to have to verify that documentation. So if you have a Colorado driver's license and it doesn't have a Wyoming address on it, obviously it's not going to, you are going to have to provide some kind of documentation as your proof of residency, whether that be a utility bill, a pay stub, a lease agreement. And in rules it designates, excuse me, it specifies all of that documentation that you can use in order to provide documentation of your residency. So I would suggest that if you know somebody that's moving here, get in and register to vote early. As you all know, in 2024, there were long lines because people wait until election day, as we have same-day voter registration in Wyoming. They wait until election day to register, and it takes a long time to go through that process to have to enter that information into our system. So I would just say if you know somebody that's moving here, please have them come early, register to vote, and get that information out. Some changes that we're doing, and Klaus is on, I don't know if he'll be able to provide or come to any of the meetings, but I'm having a working group meeting. It's a bipartisan meeting every month that I have there's about 8 people on it, and we're talking about election issues and talking about the move towards vote centers. When I took office, we moved towards doing e-poll books, which obviously if you voted in 2024, you saw the use of the e-poll books. And while it slowed the process down some, is what that also does is it runs that person that registered on election day through that process of citizenship and also through Department of Corrections. So if somebody is a felon, it caught that before that person voted. So they were able to get a provisional ballot, and then they would have to provide documentation showing that they are eligible to vote. So just some exciting things, I think, moving forward. But I think the biggest thing is making sure to know that citizenship, I think when this came through, everybody was really, really nervous about the citizenship portion of that bill, and really that has not changed the way that we process elections. We were already doing that prior to this bill even being passed. And with that, that's really the biggest thing. I think just get out, register early so that it's not impeding the process on election day. Okay.
So before we get started, I was negligent on pointing out some of the ground rules a little while ago. I come here frequently, so I know what the rules are, but I forgot to tell you, our new attendees, how this works. So we do have our 2 featured speakers to begin with. They each make their presentation, like Kayla's wonderful presentation here, and then we open it up immediately following our featured speaker's presentation for a few questions, and we will get to that shortly. Are you prepared, Barb, with who's got the mic? So we will have a person coming around with the microphone. If you have a question, raise your hand. I will call on you, then we will get you the microphone. So we'll do this for both of our featured speakers, and then when we're done, we'll go to our 2-minute speakers. We do not take questions directly after our 2-minute speakers. After they're all done speaking, we open up all of our speakers to follow-up questions. So we'll start the rotation all over again with our featured speakers. And if you didn't get an opportunity, like I can think of a whole bunch of questions I'd love to ask Kayla right now, but that's not my job, that's your job. So please feel free to ask her, but don't feel that you miss an opportunity if you don't get to this round, because we'll have another round of questions at the end, and we'll bring all the speakers back up for another round robin of questions. So my apology, I've done this a couple of times. You think I would know a little bit better, but this is how the rest of this meeting is going to run. So with that, I saw a few hands pop up already. I think Allie, Brett, and then Ginny, but we'll start with Allie Grossman. You have a question for Kayla?
I do. Thanks for being here and thanks for getting the word out. For many people in town who don't own a vehicle, don't plan on driving, don't have the ability to drive, YDOT is located pretty far from the center of town. I'm wondering in other states or municipalities if it could be that we could set up an ID office, like an alternate ID office, to make it easier for people to get state-issued IDs, or if you know of such programs and what they do in larger cities.
So I don't. I know that there are a lot of nonprofits that do transportation, like Laramie Connections and things that give people rides. One thing to note, though, too, is that for the purposes of voting, driver's license services has to issue a free ID if you can't, number one, afford it. Now, if you have to be able to get there, obviously, but they do issue those for voting purposes. And I don't know if anybody knew that. That is something we did verify with our driver's license services here in town. I don't know that all of them are doing that around the state, but I know that ours is. There is a checkbox on one of the applications that states you're getting this ID for purposes of voting, but I don't know about them setting up like a secondary location. That would be the state, and I'm not sure if they would or not, unfortunately.
Hello, Kayla.
Hi there.
So suppose you find your dream home in Wyoming and you move here from out of state in October. You don't have an address in any other state. You don't have any other place where you live. What do? You shouldn't be denied the right to vote, so can you?
From my understanding, yes, you can, because with durational residency. Now, in a federal election, you would not be denied the right. You would be allowed to vote if you don't qualify in the state where you're coming from. But I would have to look into on a non-federal election, so a non-presidential election, as to whether or not that qualifies, and I'll look into that and I can let you know.
So if you have that approved driver's license, you voted in the last election, you don't have to re-register.
Correct. If you already, so the purge so we have a purge process in statute that's been there for forever. So basically, if you vote in every general election, you remain on the rolls. If you didn't vote in the last presidential, you would have gotten a postcard from our office that or a letter actually that stated, you did not vote in the last election. Do you want to remain registered, or do you not? So you have the right to reply to that and say, yes, we want to stay on the rolls. No, we do not. If you don't reply to us, then you get taken off. But if you vote in every general election and you don't miss an election, you will continue to remain registered. You don't have to do anything else because you've already provided all of that documentation to register to vote. So you are good.
One more question if anybody has one. we start a sing-along? Hello? No.
I guess that works. So I have been an election judge before, and my question is, how will we tell from a utility bill or something else that they've been in the state 30 days?
So in the rules, it states that with so additional documents for proof of residency. In the event of a challenge, the following documents showing the individual's name and address are acceptable proof of ID in Wyoming residence. If a registrant's identification in Section 5 does not contain a Wyoming address, then the following documents showing the individual's name and Wyoming address are acceptable identification for proof of Wyoming residence. The following items must be current and be dated within 90 days from the date of registration. So on a utility bill, I think it states on there like the date the date that the bill was issued, so it has to be within that 90 days from the date that you were registering. So it's, like I said, if you wait until election day to register, we're putting a lot on our judges. As you're a judge, you know, to have to put that on our judges when we've got lines to have to verify that information. So I think it's really, really important to get out and vote early. Well, vote early too if you want to, but to get out and register early so that all of those requirements are already met prior to election day and you're already on the rolls, and it makes it a quicker process for all of us. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. So I hope you're thinking about some more questions for round 2. Maybe qualifications for election judges, hint, hint, hint. How about training, hint, hint, hint. So anyhow, I was a canvas board judge last year, so kind of partial to that. Anyhow, Mr. Eric Wiltse to talk about the First Amendment and newspapers and all kinds of fun stuff like that. 5 minutes goes quick.
It will. Anyhow, I'd like to, thank you. I'd like to preface this by saying that the news industry is the only private business specifically mentioned in the Constitution and Bill of Rights under the First Amendment. And the founding fathers did that because they thought it was critical to have a free press to act as a watchdog on government and make our government officials accountable. Anyhow, a lot of you have probably been following what's going on with the national press, with the LA Times, Washington Post, CBS, and ABC, basically bending the knee to Trump under the threat of lawsuits and settling lawsuits, as well as budget cuts to media such as Voice of America and public broadcasting. As individuals, not much we can do that. There's just so much money involved, corporate money involved, that I basically feel powerless. But what I'd like to address is what we can do collectively and individually regarding our local news coverage. One of the, I consider that possibly a bigger threat to our democracy than what's going on in Washington, D.C. Anyhow, you may have heard of news deserts. That's when a community loses any news coverage, be it a newspaper, radio station, television station, or an online news site. And since 2005, 3,200 newspapers have closed in the U.S., mainly for financial reasons. As a result, we have 1,300 communities in this country that are considered news deserts. And of those, there are 206 counties in the country that are news deserts. Another factor is with the hard times in the news industry, layoffs and staff. A lot of newspapers have become what are called ghost newspapers. They're just shadows of their former selves, largely because they don't have the money to hire staff. And as a result, you don't get the kind of news coverage the community deserves. You know, they'll skip covering town council, they'll skip covering elections, et cetera, et cetera. Anyhow, in Wyoming, as Klaus mentioned, we recently had 8 newspapers closed by their corporate owner, only to be bought by Rob Hicks out of Buffalo. And it remains to be seen what's going to happen with those. I'm expecting they're going to turn into ghost newspapers, just minimally staffed, minimal community coverage, but I hope I'm wrong on that. Some of the problems with these news deserts and ghost newspapers is the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University has studied this extensively. And in counties that have turned into news deserts, they've seen increased political polarization. They've seen more and more people voting straight party lines, no split tickets. They've seen increased re-election of incumbents. And in these news deserts, Trump in 2024 election, he won by an average of 54 percentage points in these counties that are news deserts. So most of these counties are rural. They have lower income, lower education levels, and they play right into MAGA's hands, appealing to uninformed, lesser informed voters. Some of the local effects, though, from news deserts are you can see more corruption in your local government officials because nobody is covering them. And most people don't go to local government meetings, town councils, et cetera. They rely on the newspaper or local media to cover those and put stories in the newspaper so they can know what's going on with their elected officials. Another thing, because there's no press coverage, you might see local government passing tax increases, higher fees for certain things with no public protest because the public doesn't know about that. So there's a lack of accountability, and government can increasingly operate in secrecy, holding closed meetings, not announcing meetings, violating public right to know laws. Anyhow, I've got some possible solutions to some of these problems if anybody wants to ask any questions, because my 5 minutes is over. Thank you.
Eric. Oh, thank you, Eric. Excellent presentation. I know I have a lot of questions. I hope you all out there have a lot of questions. He gave you a couple of thoughts for a few. So I will entertain some hands at this point in time for Mr. Eric. Jeff Victor? Oh, hang on.
What are your solutions?
You are one of them. On an individual level, I think it's imperative of all of us as citizens and active members of the community to support independent journalism. And in Laramie, we have the Laramie Reporter with Jeff Victor. In Wyoming, we have WyoFile and Wyoming Public Media. They have reporters all over the state. And at a national level, there's lots of really good, hard-nosed investigative reporting outlets. One that I subscribe to that I recommend highly is Popular Information, which is staffed by Judd Legum, and it really does some good data-driven investigative reporting. And not only just subscribe to these, they'll come in your email, but support them with donations too. I consider the Laramie Boomerang to be a ghost newspaper. I actually dropped my subscription to it after over 30 years because there just wasn't anything in it. So we need people like Jeff covering local government, covering local elections to fill in the gap that we're getting from our local newspaper.
I think I heard that, Eric, you are an instructor at the university, is that correct?
Retired.
You're retired,
Yeah.
but you were an instructor at the university.
Yeah.
How well supported was journalism as a discipline at the university, and what is your sense of how supported it is?
It was never very well supported. Can I tell an anecdote? So I taught one of my news writing classes in a computer lab that had no window screens. And we came into class one day, and pigeons had gotten in the classroom and crapped all over the computers. I called the physical plant and said, hey, you know, just put some screens in these windows. And they said, well, we don't have the money to do that. So one of the students in the class happened to work for the branding iron. And I took him aside and said, hey, you know, this might make a good story. So they did a story in the branding iron that apparently embarrassed the administration. And the next time we met, we had screens out our windows. And to answer your question, Donald, I don't think it's, I think support's going steadily down. And I understand why. I mean, why would students go into journalism? Low-paying job, you're now painted as an enemy of the state. You know, it's not very highly regarded by the public, and there aren't very many jobs anymore. So I think we're going to see a continued lack of support till it maybe vanishes as a major altogether.
Mr. Glass?
Yes, earlier in my career, I worked as a journalist, and I was fortunate to work for a good publication which had copy editors, which had fact checkers, actually had real journalistic standards, not just you know, not just someone posting on Facebook, for example. And well, you know, one of the things I'm concerned about is the private equity firms that are buying out the remaining local newspapers. Don't do that. The Boomerang, which you mentioned, has half a reporter. How do we rescue our publications? You know, are there any success stories of rescuing publications from private equity that's just basically milking them to death?
Yeah, one of the solutions would be citizen journalism, which I believe the Boomerang tried at one point, trying to recruit members of community, train them as reporters basically, and then send them out to cover meetings, various community events. It succeeded in some places. I don't know what happened at the Boomerang, but I never saw that it got off the ground. That would be one possible solution. The other is government support. And I don't mean nobody wants to see the government running the press. I mean, we got to keep the two entities separate. But some proposals I've seen are giving tax credits to subscribers for their loyal following of the newspapers, federal grants or state or local grants to support newspapers. And probably most important is doing more education for the public on media literacy so they can tell the difference between fake news and legitimate, credible news sources. Now, with the current administration in Washington and Cheyenne, none of those are probably going to happen, but they are floated out there as ideas.
One more before we let you go.
Maybe we should support ghost newspapers in the sense that we could try to build subscriptions so that they would have more revenue, because you could apply that same argument of doing what you suggest to teachers. Life is not easy for teachers these days, but we don't want to not have them and not have education.
Yeah, I don't know what the situation is now, but when I worked for newspapers, subscriptions you hoped would basically pay the cost of the newsprint and ink, just the actual physical newspaper part. Advertising is what, you know, paid your salary, paid the bills, and in theory, except the internet has sucked off so much advertising, particularly classified advertising, which was bread and butter, easy money for newspapers at one point. So yeah, more subscriptions might lead to more advertising, maybe. But you know, if you're not getting news that you need, I just couldn't justify subscribing to the local newspaper anymore. So, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Remember, if you have any more questions for Eric, we will bring him back up again at the end of the meeting. So now we will move on to our 2-minute featured speakers. And our first featured speaker is going to be Mr. Brett Glass, and he's going to be talking about a sales tax surprise meeting.
Yes, this item was just announced at 3 p.m. today. And it's just taking a lot of people by surprise. On Wednesday night at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers, the city will be having a work session to discuss what they are going to recommend as the use for the 5th penny of sales tax for the coming several years. This is very short notice. A lot of people aren't even realizing that this is going to happen. And they're going to take the results of this work session and go immediately into negotiations with the county and with Rock River over this. So it's very important that the people be informed that this is happening. And if you want to see your tax money used for a particular thing, maybe to help with the stormwater drainage issues that we're having all the controversy about, this is the time to speak up. By the way, that sales tax was used for stormwater drainage projects in 2018 going forward, so there is a history of that. That's all. That's all for that one.
Our next featured 2-minute speaker is going to be Denise Greller, and she is going to talk about Laramie Adult Daycare. Well, I actually had Dennis after you since you kind of, you want to go that way? Okay. I guess I'll allow that. You guys are both talking about similar topics. All right, change of pace upon request of our 2-minute speaker, Denise. Dennis, if you're okay with that, Dennis would like to talk about nursing homes here in Laramie, I believe. Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Well, thank you. I'm kind of like a broken record at these meetings. I've been here about the nursing home since last winter, when our first effort was to get rid of the bill or the law that prevented the Department of Health from issuing a permit for a new nursing home in Laramie. And your help and other people, letters to legislators and emails, that passed, and so there's no restriction on nursing homes after July 1st, 2026. So I'm a member of the Ivinson Hospital Board of Trustees, and we're the owners of the hospital. And we lease or rent it out to a separate nonprofit corporation just for some administrative purposes. But we are the owners. All the property and all the money that the hospital has is your money. And so I'm here talking about using our money to build a brand new nursing home. So on Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, the Ivinson Hospital Board of Trustees is having a regular public meeting. And at that public meeting, they're opening up for public comment. And at my suggestion, they're having it in a bigger conference room so there can be more people come. And it's important to let people on elected boards know that you're in favor of that. So before they spend big amounts of money, $30 to $40 million, it's important for you to come. Curiously about newspapers, when I wrote the letter to the editor a while back, they said maybe they would cover it, but probably not. But now they've decided. So the Boomerang will be there on Wednesday afternoon to cover the meeting. So I urge you all to come. It's very important to show your support. Our nursing home needs to be changed. It's 80 years old, and we can do much better for the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And I bet you're all surprised who our next speaker is going to be. Denise Greller, to talk about Laramie Adult Daycare.
So I wholeheartedly support having a new nursing home and a bigger nursing home in Wyoming and in Laramie specifically. Oh, sorry. The one we have is small. It cannot serve us all. Did you know that Wyoming is the second, has the second largest number of seniors percentage-wise of all the states, Montana beating us? And that's because a lot of our young people leave, but also people come here because of the tax advantage as retirees. So we're going to need senior services of all kinds. And one of the senior services that we do not have at all is a adult daycare, a drop-in kind of adult daycare where a caregiver could have half a day or a whole day respite. The person they care for can be in a social activity setting and enjoy that and be safe and get help if they need help to the restroom or whatever. And so there's a small committee of us working on this. But my biggest hope is if the nursing home idea goes through at the hospital, that we might be able to convince them to plan in space and staff to have a drop-in daycare in addition to the nursing home care. There is no such thing here in Laramie. Spring Wind, Edge, whatever is that place. The best you can do is if you want respite as a caregiver, you have to leave your person there 7 days at $300 a day. And most people can't afford that. So anyway, come support the idea of a new nursing home by the hospital on Wednesday, and think about supporting the idea of adult daycare. I have some sheets of information and my contact information.
Thank you, Denise. I hope you guys are getting your questions ready. We're getting close to the end again. So, a couple more featured speakers, and then we'll go through the list again. For a return, repeat performance, Brett Glass going to talk about stormwater, and apparently there's a lawsuit, I'm guessing, from this card here.
Yes, another news flash, sort of related, a little bit related to the first topic I spoke on. As of August 13th, the meeting of the University of Wyoming trustees, they have told their legal counsel, they have instructed them to sue the city of Laramie on the grounds that the stormwater drainage tax that they are attempting to impose, and they want to impose it on the university as well as everybody else, is illegal and unconstitutional. And this, of course, if this lawsuit is successful, or if the university is able to get legislation passed that says it doesn't have to pay this, this cuts $400,000 per year out of the city's proposed budget for its stormwater utility department. This is a major hit. This is a reason why this coming Tuesday night, we really should ask the council to consider repealing and reconsidering and possibly replacing the current stormwater ordinance, because there are many things about it that people believe were illegal, including imposing it without presenting it to the people in an election. And also because it's worth negotiating with the university so that we don't have a big fight over it. Anyway, that's I'll take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. So I'm really excited to introduce our next featured speaker, House District 13 Representative Ken Chestek, going to talk about banning books. Hopefully you're all up to speed on this. If not, you will be shortly.
Thank you, Klaus. And I just want to get a quick update as to where we are with the book banning bill. And I'm going to call it a book banning bill because that's what it really is. I'm on the House Judiciary Committee. We had our meeting up in Casper last week, where several of the proponents of this bill told me to my incredulous face that this is not a book banning bill. It doesn't ban any books. It just requires you to reshelve them in a different place. Which, of course, what that means is if you want to display books that are designed for children, you have to hide them in the adult section. So now the children have to go hunting through the adult section of the library to find the books, which doesn't sound like a good idea to me. But for schools, which don't have adult sections of their libraries, it's a straight up book ban. You can't have these books. What kind of books are you not allowed to have? You're not allowed to display books that are sexually explicit. Has nothing, the word obscenity does not show up. They're not saying we're getting rid of obscenity. They're getting rid of sexually explicit books. They're not using the Miller test, which is the one you're familiar with, books that appeal to a prurient interest and have no socially redeeming value. That's the definition of obscenity. That's not used in this bill. It says sexually explicit, which is a much broader definition. At least sex education books have socially redeeming value, so they're not obscene. So you can display books that are used for sex education. But they are sexually explicit, and I mean, they have to be in order to accomplish the purpose. So those kind of books are being banned. So what's going to happen next? We had like 900, literally 900 emails from folks like you. Thank you for those emails. They're 100% opposed to the bill that's coming up again in our meeting in October. And we didn't decide anything. There's now an amendment process going to go through. I'd love to talk to you after the meeting about whether or not I should engage in amendments or just let the thing go. I'm inclined to try and amend it into oblivion so that whatever passes at least won't be as bad as the current version of it. But I'm happy to talk after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. All right, we will now start all over again from the beginning, and we'll entertain questions for our speakers in order of appearance, so to speak. So does anybody have any questions for our excellent County Clerk, Kayla White? Any follow-up questions? Well, you get to come up for round two, Kayla.
Hi. My question is, and maybe it's obvious, but not to me, can we still change parties prior to an election?
So you have to change your party prior to filing. It's the same law that was before, so usually filing's around May 15th-ish. If you want to change your party, you have to do that prior to the first day of filing.
Which is May?
It's different every year because of the time frame, but it's going to be in mid-May.
So it should be in April if I want to do something like that.
I mean, you can do it the day before filing. You just have to, if you want to change your party, you have to do it prior to the first day of filing.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the last election, when you were required to take a driver's license or proof of your identity to the polls, I voted absentee. I just called the county election office, said, hey, send me a absentee ballot. No questions asked. I filled it out, dropped it off the drop box. Nobody came out and asked me for ID, which I thought was hilarious. I liked it. Is there talk of eliminating that loophole?
There's always been talks about eliminating that loophole, but they didn't pass any bills regarding it. So that is the one time you don't have to present an ID to vote is when you request it through either the mail or over the phone. I hope that when you did call, of course, we would ask your first name, your last name, verify your address and your birth date to make sure we have the right person in your party affiliation in a primary election. But that is the one time that you don't have to present an ID to vote. I would imagine maybe it'll come back. I think it'll probably come back every election, but as long as there's mail-in, some states use it to where you have to put a copy of your driver's license or something in with your ballot. I don't know that they'll move towards that, but I have a feeling it's not going to die. It'll come back at some point. So.
Allie first. Marion, Allie had her hand up first. I'll give you your exercise.
Apologies if you went over this, but I remember people asking me like over a year ago now if an expired ID is a valid ID, because all of the language said valid, and there wasn't any information about expired.
So from my understanding, and I always have to check rules, it has to be for purposes of, are you talking about for purposes of voting or purposes of registering? Because there's two separate, can I grab my book? I need these rules. So there's rules that prescribe for registering to vote, and then there's rules for voting, and they're not the same. So when you register to vote, you can use an ID. We follow notary law, which is a ID can be expired up to 3 years. So you can use an ID for registering, but I believe for voting, and I might have to look and let you know. I believe it has to be a valid. So it makes it really hard for people because you could go in and you can register on election day with an ID that you can't then vote with. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. The rules don't coincide. And in an effort of time, let me look through these, Allie, and I can let you know towards the end of the meeting if that's okay.
One more from Chris Stratton.
I might be able to find it here.
Just a quick question on where Albany County and Wyoming is currently standing with the newest presidential decree.
That I am not sure. I haven't heard anything yet, so there hasn't been any scuttle in with the presidential, with his executive order, or
yeah, the executive order that is the must vote in person, and there's all of the other junk. Sorry, I was asking the question about the current presidential order that was written, I think, either today or yesterday, stating that it was going to force you to vote in person. There was not going to be any mail-in ballots, and there was going to be the removal of some of the voting machines.
I haven't heard of anything yet for the state of Wyoming. I mean, our laws allow it, so that I do not know.
Thank you, Kayla. You have a lot of stuff. Well, lots of litigation. I did see before I came here tonight, and just to kind of somewhat answer Chris's question for Kayla, almost every executive order that President Trump puts out winds up going to court, and the majority of them wind up getting overturned because they just don't follow the Constitution. I would imagine this will be the same situation. Our dear friend from Russia, Vladimir Putin, did tell him that he was pretty sure that Trump won the 2020 election and he was cheated, and that he should get rid of voting machines. That was in an article I saw just before I came. So I'm sure the last person in the room, they say, always has Trump's attention, so that might be a lot of where that came from. So it is something to pay attention. Lots of craziness going on. Thank you for allowing me to ad lib, and my apologies for the board for doing that. But anyhow, Eric, do we have any questions for Eric and local newspapers and the First Amendment? We have Noel O'Toole. So Eric, you get to come back up for round 2. And there's no time limit on this one.
Oh, I'll try to be brief.
Eric, this is slightly off topic, but is on topic if you're exercising your freedom of expression. How well do you think the Wyoming Open Records Act functions?
Well, all states, you know, their public records laws and open meetings laws, I think they only function as well as people are willing to challenge the government entity that is operating as secret, closing meetings, or taking votes behind closed doors. And without, in most cases, historically, it's been the media that have brought these lawsuits forward. And generally, judges have been pretty supportive of the press because the laws are pretty clear cut on you can close a meeting for these reasons, you cannot close it for these reasons. So, you know, Wyoming is only going to be is only going to follow the open meetings laws as much as the media will let them, I think. And with the media being increasingly weakened and not being able to afford lawyers, I'm afraid that we're going to see a lot of violations of open meetings, public records laws.
Any more questions for Eric? Sylvia? You almost got it.
It's okay.
Hi, I was curious about the concept of news media people being afraid to report on certain things. You definitely are seeing that at the federal level, but I'm curious, is that impacting also people in Wyoming?
Well, I've been out of the media for so long that I really can't speak to that. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah, okay.
Any other questions for Eric?
I just wonder what you think about the use of AI in news reporting, which may or may not be fake news.
I don't think much about it. I mean, I think about it, but it's scary.
Yeah, how does the news consumer know?
You know, I was just reading a story about AI-generated music, which is just going insane. And so far, the music industry and the software the AI companies that are generating music are labeling it as AI-generated. And I would like to see the news industry do the same thing if this becomes commonplace.
Oh, sorry. We had wanted to hear the answer from Jeff rather than wait, if that's okay.
Jeff wasn't one of our speakers, so I'm sorry about that. But we would love to have Jeff back as another featured speaker. I did try to con him into it earlier, full disclosure. So thank you for the question, though. So now, any questions for Mr. Glass on either one of his topics, sales tax and the surprise meeting, or his stormwater lawsuit? Do I see any hands for that? Pat? So, Brett?
Yes.
If I am incorrect, please tell me, Brett, but it's my understanding that the legislature has, well, that there is legislation that protects the university from having to pay any property tax or any such taxes like that, which of course is a travesty in our community because there they are with all that and they don't contribute much. But Isn't that your understanding, that they can't be forced to pay this sort of a payment?
Now, well, that's the interesting thing. This stormwater tax is sort of a fee and sort of a tax. The legislature actually calls it, if you look at the law, actually calls it a service that the city charges for. But at the same, and so that would make it a fee rather than a tax. But at the same time, the same law mandates that the taxing authority collect it on every property. So in that sense, it's assessed against your property, and so it's sort of a tax. What the university will probably argue in court is that it's entirely a tax, and therefore they're exempt. And if they lose that lawsuit, they'll probably go on to ask a friendly legislator to exempt them from the fee, if it's if it's considered to be a fee. This is again a serious problem. The stormwater doesn't stop at the edges of the university and the city has to get rid of it. So if we do have this extensive stormwater department, it can't survive without the money from them. So we'll just have to see what happens. What I'm convinced is likely to happen, though, is that they could win just on the grounds of the city not having held an election, because that is absolutely explicit in the law. If you look at Wyoming statutes, Title 16, Chapter 10, Section 105, I've got this memorized, 105E. It specifically says that there has to be an election in which the public approves the means of funding the stormwater system, and that hasn't been done. Yes.
I am just curious because I do know that they had, there's the option for it to be a tax and an option for it. They had selected the other option. What is the difference between the two, and how can one be considered a fee and the other one considered a tax?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. If you go and you ask, you get on the internet and you look to see what courts have ruled on this, or if you ask your favorite AI chatbot about this, what they will say is that you get something is a fee if you get a direct benefit from it, and it's a tax if it's sort of something that you're assessed and you pay for the general welfare. So in that sense, this stormwater payment is more like a tax, but Wyoming law calls it a fee. So go figure. I'm sure this is going to be food for a lot of thought for whatever judge gets the case.
We're going to move on to our next. You've had a couple of questions, thank you. So we're going to try to keep this on schedule. Keep in mind that you're all welcome to stay after the meeting and talk to any of our speakers. This last topic was quite interesting, something I know a little bit, so if you want to ask me about it, I'd be more than glad to share my thoughts. Anyhow, Dennis Cook is our next speaker on the list. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Cook about the nursing home and the wonderful work that the Board of Trustees are doing to bring a new one? We do have one question for you, Dennis. I'm sorry. Actually, if you want to sit there, Dennis, we'll bring you a microphone. Oh, you're already up, I guess.
Thank you, Dennis, for all your work on this. I know the effective date had kind of gone back and forth in various versions of the bill, and I had lost track of the fact that it didn't actually have an effective date until a year from now. And I realize a year goes very fast, but still, in terms of planning and in terms of your work with the hospital, do you see that causing any issues as far as people saying we need to wait, or there could be another change in the next legislature, or there could be some sort of litigation? Does that effective date affect the current work significantly in your estimation?
Actually, I think it works to our advantage just because you have to, it's a pretty major undertaking. You have to figure out first whether you're going to do it and at what level, and then you have to go figure out where you're going to do it, hire architects and engineers and people who know about nursing home designs and that stuff. So I think it didn't impair anything. It actually made it practical for the hospital to do a thoughtful, methodical process to be ready to go and apply for or start a process after July 1st next summer. So.
Come on, Dennis walked all the way up here. We're gonna have at least one more question. Sylvia and then Denise.
Well, the question is how long would it take to build? And the experience is that the town of Sidney, Nebraska, they're part of the UCL system, and like us, they're an affiliate, not owned. But they've had a nursing home for a long time, and they decided a couple years that they were going to replace it with something newer and more efficient, cost efficient. And once they made the decision, it was kind of planned, done within a year, year and a half, and they built a 60-bed, 65-bed nursing home. It cost them a little over $20 million. So it's doable in record time if you finally make the commitment. And the only thing I'd add is there's the letter to the editor that was published last Saturday, and it has the meeting information and how you can Zoom the meeting if you want. So pick one of those up from Sharon at the back if you want that. Thank you.
Sorry, Dennis. We're going to finish with Sylvia, and then we'll move on to our last question.
For the meeting, I was curious if you have any suggestions on talking points or issues that would be important to talk about.
Well, a lot of people are going to talk about their experiences with the current place. We're going to have, I've been told, several nurses and professionals, doctors, who will have some comments about the care and the conditions over there. And other people just have personal stories about why they think it needs to be replaced. I don't think there's a great big debate about whether it should be replaced. It's just now a question if we're going to commit public money. And since we have, I have to compliment the staff. They've created a savings account that's incredible. And, but just to save money for the sake of it is stupid. So we have the money, and let's just convince my colleagues and the board of directors that the community's behind a change. So thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. All right. Our last featured speaker of the night was Ken Chestek. Does anybody have any questions for Ken? All right. Ginny has a question for you.
I wonder if they're going to ban the Bible because of the Song of Solomon and some other passages that have fairly explicit discussions about sex.
So one of the witnesses we had last week in Casper was a Methodist minister wearing his clerical collar, the whole bit. And he got up there and he started reading some of the passages of the Bible that would be banned, clearly would be banned. And not only, I mean, it's the Bible, it's the Torah, the Quran, all the sacred texts of the Abrahamic religions, but also some other ones. And he said, are you going to ban the Bible? That was his question to the committee. And several of the members of the committee said, no, that's a sacred, I mean, heads exploded when he said that, right? So it was, I do think there will be amendments that are passed. That might be one of them. They'll carve out an exception for sacred text, perhaps. There's going to be amendments proposed and adopted, but we'll see where the process goes from here.
I can see new sexual education quoting passages from the Bible.
I would love to see you put the amendment on the table banning it.
I don't need to do that because it already does ban the Bible. There's no amendment needed.
Hi. What do they mean by sexually explicit?
There's a very long definition, but it basically means any depiction or description of sexual intercourse, and there's a lot of other stuff, but basically anything that has to do with sex that either is displayed in a picture, cartoon, writing, description of it, anything. It's pretty broad.
What about trans, gay,
Oh yeah,
lesbian?
that's totally gone. Absolutely would be, because that's sexual explicit. So they're going to ban that, and that is actually the intent, I think, of what they're trying to do.
I was curious what the vote is on the Judiciary Committee. Will it pass regardless of amendments and everything?
I do believe there will be amendments that are adopted. My reading of the room was that it's likely to pass in some form, not in the current form. The penalties are just ridiculous. And there's a lot of sentiment, even some of the sponsors were saying, I think this is a bit too extreme on the, so the penalty is going to be cut back. I don't know how much. There's a lot of ways to cut the penalty back, but there will be amendments that are passed, but something is going to pass. I'm pretty certain that something will pass. What it looks like after the amendment process, I don't know. I'm probably going to participate in some significant, dramatic amendments to it to try and minimize the harm, only because I do think something will pass, and I want it to be as weak as possible. I'll still vote against it, but I'll try and amend it to be weak before I vote against it.
Thank you, Mr. Chestnut. So I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. It has been a great August meeting. I want to thank all of our speakers, featured speakers, and 2-minute speakers. I always come to these meetings hoping to learn something, and I never leave disappointed. And again, I like seeing all the familiar faces and the new faces too, so welcome. Please consider coming to our next September meeting, which I believe is September 15th. That'll be here at 7 p.m., and it's always the third Monday of every month. And we look forward to seeing you then. If you did not get your questions asked, and I'm sorry I had to cut some of you off, we try to follow a time limit. Sometimes I don't always do a good job at it, but I'm trying to get better at it. So thank you for putting up with me, and I'm sorry that I cut you off. But please feel free to hang out. We have the room for a little while longer. All of our speakers will be more than glad to answer any questions you may have, and we all look forward to seeing you again next month. So thank you again for showing up. The PVA thanks you.